Good morning. At the end of the 20th century, in the early 90s, I found myself in the midst of a personal crisis due to circumstances beyond my control. I love that phrase, as if we could ever control circumstance. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was a mess. A work colleague suggested that I attend a retreat she was going to. So I found myself in the beautiful North Carolina mountains in October at a being retreat. The purpose of the retreat was to be, not to do, not to act, not to perform, just to be. I was the youngest person in the room, something that I am rarely able to say these days. I was a young woman in the midst of a midlife crisis. And the middle-aged and older women in this community welcomed me with open arms, listening to my story, sharing my tears, giving me hope for the future. On the last day, we were given the opportunity to go on a walking meditation, to walk, pray, meditate, and then journal about the experience. I walked out into the midst of a forest and found myself standing at the foot of a large tree. The tree had obviously experienced some kind of violent trauma. It looked like perhaps lightning had hit and split the tree into two parts halfway up. What I found amazing was that the main part of the tree had continued to grow upwards, skywards, like it had been growing its entire tree life. The part of the tree that had been split off to the side was also still growing. It wasn't puny, it wasn't sickly looking, it was a vibrant section of tree. It was no longer headed towards the sky. Its wood was growing in a different direction, a strong direction, a thriving direction. The tree was, for me, a strong metaphor. This is an occupational hazard for an English teacher, finding metaphors popping up hither and yon. The tree was a symbol of hope. Even after a traumatic experience, there were options for me. Perhaps I would go straight, skyward, in the direction I had always intended to go. Or perhaps I would change directions. But even in the changing of direction, there could still be the possibility for strength and beauty and vitality. A year later, after many decisions and changes of direction, I attended my second being retreat. When on the last day of the retreat, we were invited once again to go on a walking meditation, I knew exactly where I was going. I was going to revisit my tree, my metaphor, my inspiration for hope. I set out on the same path I had walked the year before, only to become hopelessly lost. I wasn't lost out in the woods, unable to find my way back to the retreat center. No, I just couldn't find my tree. As the time allotted for the meditation and journaling slipped past, I frustratedly and disappointedly sat down on a stump. I pulled up my journal and my pen and took a deep breath, or 3, and got ready to write. I looked around me and realized that I was in an absolutely beautiful part of the forest. I realized that my stump had a little back on it, turning it into something of a little chair. I realized that the late morning sun was shining through the beautiful autumnal leaves. I opened my journal and wrote these words. Where I find myself is not where I intended to be. However, it is a good place nonetheless. As an English teacher, I warn my students of the dangers of using extreme language in their writing. While I try to practice what I preach and avoid statements that start out, many of us, most of us, all of us, I feel pretty confident in saying that when we gathered together last October in your building on Central Park West, none of us could have predicted what this October 2020 and would be, and the places we would find ourselves. We are not, I would wager, in the places we intended to be. Now, I'm not yet ready, given all of the things that have happened this year, to say that I am in a good place nonetheless. However, I am open to the hope that it can be a vital place, though I am not where I intended to be. Where I am has potential. It is not without hope. It has its own moments of unexpected grace and joy. Last October, when we gathered, I told you that in my tradition, the first Sunday in October is World Communion Celebration. Soyal and many volunteers brought different kinds of bread from different parts of the world, accompanied by stories of everyone at the table, whatever. Our table is virtual. These days we find ourselves at a table with fewer place settings. Perhaps you find yourself eating almost all your meals alone. Sharing meals together is such an important aspect of our relationships. How do we celebrate communion with one another when we are so desperately physically separated from one another? In Emma Donohue's book for middle-aged kids, The Lottery's More or Less, a super blended family of 2 moms, 2 dads, 7 kids, 1 grandpa whose name is Grumps, which tells you a little bit about his disposition, 2 cats, a rat, a parrot, and a 3-legged dog get ready for the holiday season. And 9-year-old Sumac is really frustrated that because of an ice storm and other circumstances beyond her control, her holiday will not progress as it always has. Her traditions will have to be changed. We ourselves are headed into the holiday season. Nights are growing longer, days are getting darker, temperatures are becoming colder, and the celebrations we normally participate in, Thanksgiving parades, Halloween trick-or-treating, winter festivals, tree lighting ceremonies, nutcracker ballets, rocket spectaculars, office holiday debacles, family meals, parties with friends, these cannot be held in the same traditional way due to COVID precautions. We already know holidays can be fraught with depression and anxiety. Some of us find ourselves, as Sean sang in the James Taylor song, on that lonesome road all by ourselves. How much more difficult will that be when we are not able to gather and help each other celebrate? I had a blast standing around the piano while Sean played and bunches of us sang at last year's holiday party at 4th U. I'm going to miss that this year. What can we do? What can you do to help yourself through this holiday season? What can you do to help your family or friends who might be alone this year? How can you create community for folks you know who cannot get out and about? These are not rhetorical questions. Please type some of your brainstorming ideas into the chat. I'll toss out some of my ideas while you're typing. We'll have time to talk more about these in the breakout sessions during the coffee hour. Find creative new ways. Go ahead, chat. Find creative new ways to celebrate whatever holiday you normally celebrate. The 24 days of Advent, the 8 days of Hanukkah, winter solstice, the 12 days of Christmas, Kwanzaa, Las Posadas, Diwali. Did I mention a holiday you don't recognize? Look it up. See how other folks celebrate at this time of year. Is there a place you've always longed to visit? We may not be able to easily travel this holiday season, but you could do some research. Find out how they celebrate the holidays in that place. Create their decorations, make some of their holiday goodies, listen to some holiday music, watch one of their holiday movies. Are you someone who is able to get out and walk around the city, appropriately protected, of course? Do you know someone who is unable to leave their home? Send them photos of their favorite New York places. Commit to sending funny memes or inspirational quotes for a week. Make a playlist of your favorite songs and include the links to the videos and send it to the folks you love. Who knows? They may find a new favorite song. Are you an actor, musician, artist, dancer, performer? Record yourself performing and send that as a link to folks you know who miss going out on the town for a show or an exhibition. Do you have friends who don't have technology? Write them an old-fashioned letter. Make them a handmade card. Agree to run an errand for someone who is isolating themselves. This year, we may not be able to gather together around a real table in real time. We may experience moments of sadness or frustration or anger about where we find ourselves this year. We may have to put on our thinking caps, think outside the box, stretch our imaginations. Now is the time to prepare. We are already in communion with one another. We know that. It looks and feels different, but it is community. It is communion. We may not be where we intended to be, but together we can make this place, this surreal, weird, sometimes daunting place, a vital place of potential and grace and hope nonetheless.